pain pushes, vision pulls. And it's this concept that you will either be pushed by pain to the point of surrender, and you're going to say, man, I've tried this, nothing's going to change, this is the way it's going to be. Or sometimes you cross that chasm and you go, man, I have an idea, or I'm in a culture that has an idea, I belong in this vision, and then you see it through.
All right, here we are. What are we calling this? This is podcasts, year of the human podcast. We're the year of the human podcast. I've got Danny Zaslavsky, who is the co-founder of VINCUE, one of the companies that we, Automotive Ventures, have invested in. Danny, I see you at a lot of conferences. We don't have a lot of opportunities to sit down and actually go deep in some topics. So I really appreciate you making some time today.
Thanks for asking me.
So let's go back and talk about your origin story. Immigrant family.
Yep.
Entrepreneur family.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that and then how that made a natural transition into what was DealerQ and now VINCUE.
Yeah, so I think the why is more important than the what. And so if you think about that for anybody in the audience, the why pushes the what. The what changes, but your why evolves. And there was a quote that I learned early that this will play into it. I've shared it with you before. Pain pushes, vision pulls. And it's this concept that you will either be pushed by pain to the point of surrender, and you're going to say, man, I've tried this, nothing's going to change, this is the way it's going to be. Or sometimes you cross that chasm and you go, man, I have an idea, or I'm in a culture that has an idea, I belong in this vision, and then you see it through. And as a human, obviously, it's a lot more fun to be pulled by vision than pushed by pain. My parents came from Ukraine in 1979, and they were Jewish, and they didn't like Jews over there. And my parents sold all their stuff, went on quote-unquote vacation to Italy, and then we applied at the Jewish community centers around the country. And then there was this awesome guy named Art who sponsored our first year of life. No different than you see on TV, like sponsor a family. And that's how we ended up
here in the U.S.
Here in the U.S., in Kansas City. And it was through the Jewish Community Center. We came. I was born in 83, so I was actually born in the U.S., but my folks got this duplex. My grandparents lived on one side, I lived on the other, and my grandparents basically raised me because my dad had a shoe repair business. My mom had worked in a clothing factory, and then my grandma, as she learned English, taught me English, but I didn't speak it until I was about 8. And so I remember the tribalness, and that's the lesson from that is like the culture of our family and the importance of connection. That was something that I know today I use in my culture at VINCUE. But then I watched my dad, and my dad told me this. He goes, the rules are different in Ukraine. If somebody throws a brick through your window, you don't call your insurance company, you don't call the police, you replace the window. The rules are different. And so when he got into the car business, he did it because he sold some cars at this dealership and became partners. Early, he was a wholesaler. And being a wholesaler in the 80s and 90s, I mean, you were a fighter because you're showing up to these dealerships and all the wholesalers just wanted to buy the good stuff. And most dealers didn't want to sell just the good stuff. And so there was a ton of lessons in that we learned. But I'll keep going if you want.
Keep going. I got lots. I'm taking notes here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here I am in the back of my dad's car, going from dealership to dealership, buying cars. My dad, bull in the china closet, love him, but just old school kind of yeller style of a car dealer. And I was in the back touching cars. We were going up negotiating, but my dad taught me, he goes, if they don't win, we don't win. And that's when we came up with this concept, WAR, wholesale, auction, retail. We'd wholesale cars to other dealers or buy, auction, retail. And back in the day, we didn't, financing wasn't really a thing in the early 90s. We were a cash lot selling $3,000 to $12,000 price range cars. And we were putting cars on the Thrifty Nickel and Auto Trader magazine, all that kind of stuff. But the pivotal moment that landed in me was in 2002, we walked into a Sears on Metcalf, bought our first computer, bribed the kid. We don't know how to use this thing. Can you come to our dealership, install it? Kid said, sure. He showed up to our dealership and he goes, how are you getting cars online? And we go, we're not. And he goes, well, how about I help you do that? How are you logging customers? Well, pen and paper. Let me help you fix that. And so he built VIN stickers that turned into VIN solutions, which was a really cool moment. I didn't have any money. We didn't invest, but we certainly helped him incubate that. That was another one of those moments.
What year would that have been?
2002. Yeah, which you later in 2009, 10 with Chip.
11, early 11.
11 purchased that company, which was a cool story for later. So if you think about like the tribalness of my growing up, and you think about that moment where industry and technology intersected with Matt, I watched him build his company, later sell it to you all in, you know, the high hundreds of millions of dollars. My dad really pushed me to figure out how to be, because we were scrappy, we were, you know, efficient. We couldn't afford a floor plan, so we didn't have a floor plan. We sold some cars, we bought some more. We sold those, we bought some more, and we built this company this way. I'm gay, and growing up gay, you have this ability to live two lives, where you have your friend's life and then you have your other friends and family life. And I remember that pressure of not enjoying not being my authentic self, because that bleeds into other places that you exist. And my parents being immigrants had, you know, a different belief system. And so I remember reshaping my own belief system because I didn't want to be the person that lived a lie later. And I remember how much I fought wanting to be my whole self, and the ability that I brought to the world if I was. I started dating somebody, and we were together for 9 years, had 2 beautiful kids together through surrogacy. But there was another pivotal moment that happened to me in 2015. My dad had a stroke, and then the partner I was with took his own life. And it was just a terrible time in my life. And I remember these moments that happen. And for those of you listening, you've had these moments. You've lost, you've had pain, back to this idea of pain pushes, vision pulls. You've had these moments where it's like this crucible moment. Do I go left? Do I go right? Is this going to be my existence? Am I going to live in the past, or am I going to define? And when you go through loss, your friends, what do? How are you doing? How are you doing? And at moments that can become your story. And I remember thinking, this isn't going to become my story. So I took the lessons from the tribalness of me growing up. I took the lessons from watching Matt build Vin Solutions and build a culture that I respected, and the innovation that happened. And I took the lessons from my relationship, and I had an idea. I wanted to build a software company. And so I've always been attracted to people who could teach me something. And I had some pretty neat people in my life, and I started being just a magnet to anybody who could grow me. And I watched other people, other personalities that are very intimidated by that. God forbid they come into the culture and they're going to take my job, right? It's the scarcity mentality. I trained myself to have the exact opposite. I saw those people as people that could scale me, and I started seeking opportunities to get really uncomfortable, because what's the worst that could happen? That already happened to me. And I connected, obviously, with Matt. I had a business idea. And in my own business, we were suffering because I was watching this, used to be called race to the bottom when it comes to inventory. I was watching us use 7 different systems to manage inventory. I was watching, and that's where my skill set was. And I go, man, I can do something about this. And so that's where VINCUE was born for me.
Very cool. So let me unpack a little bit. We'll take you back a bit.
Let's do it.
First, art. Did your family stay in contact with art? Whatever happened to art?
Yeah.
And then help us understand what motivated art to help you guys specifically. What's the story there?
Funny enough, I don't know. I don't know what motivated art. He passed away when I was like 5 or 6 years old, but he paid for literally our duplex for a year. And my mom went to work at Salamander clothing factory. I remember going with my mom to work and like living under her desk. My grandma had a little tailor shop. I'd go to her. My dad had a shoe repair shop. I'd go to him. And I always joke Jewish, because you can't really practice in Ukraine. And so my parents gave me whatever faith they were able to, but they didn't really have a lot. And so that community gave me a sense of belonging. And I remember how important that was to me, especially growing up gay and looking for that belonging when I couldn't be honest with my own family up until I was like 20 years old.
It's very interesting. You know, I think of my mother a lot, who's still alive, thankfully. And I think I've learned, you know, the key to success. Well, not success, but happiness in life is grace, generosity, and gratitude. Those three things. And, I like you, have had a couple of people in my life that have been pivotal catalysts that didn't have to, but for some reason took an interest, extended grace at the right moment, and gave you guidance, gave you a nudge that they didn't have to give. And I've always been fascinated by why people do that.
I used to be skeptical about it because it's like, what are they trying to get out of it? I don't know, were you ever skeptical about like why somebody would mentor you?
When it's happened in my life, it hasn't been self-motivated. So it is interesting. It's a uniquely human characteristic. I don't think it happens elsewhere in the animal kingdom, but it's kind of interesting. I like to dive into the stories. It would be nice if you're able to find out more about art. I'd love to know more about what the motivation was. That's really interesting. And then you had mentioned pain pushes and vision pulls, which is kind of interesting too. When we're investing, we're typically investing very early stage. And I like to say, and it's only somewhat tongue in cheek, that I like dysfunctional founders. I like founders that have a chip on their shoulder, have a reason that they have to win. They've been slighted in the past, or they've been beat up in the past, or whatever it might be. The vision's great. And I think the vision's really important to be able to recruit people and rally people towards the cause and sell. But I think the pain has to be felt. Like the pain has to have been experienced by a founder. I'm always interested with these relatively young founders that, for example, I hate to say it's like stereotypical, but hey, last weekend, my mother went in to buy a car and it was really painful. So I'm going to commit the rest of my life to solve that problem. I'd much rather have a founder that comes to me and says like, I've lived through and I've felt this pain and it was unbearable and I will die before I solve this problem. I will relentlessly and unceasingly try to pursue a solution to this problem. There's just different motivation overall. And that comes from a place of pain. And I like that because I think there can be a healthy expression. You see many of these bios on these incredible athletes, and they came from like underprivileged families that never had a chance. And then they get this one shot and they take it. And I think it's very, very, very interesting to see the motivation. I guess one, react to that. You come across a lot of founders. You are a successful founder. Does that resonate with you or not? And how do you think about your personal motivation? Like what gets you up every day excited, wanting to go like vanquish the dragon?
Yeah. So look, so many lessons, and I hope you can apply these to yourselves and people that you've encountered. But I watched my dad be a tornado in all of these departments and show up and think that his chaos somehow created progress. And then he did that to the point of having a stroke. I learned from that and I go, that is not going to be me. And Patrick Abad said on stage earlier, hold people able, not accountable. And I think that is something that is an unlock in me. I think as an entrepreneur, you hate to hear bad news. You love to hear ways to solve a problem. But you don't want to be told why something's not working. You want to be told on how we're going to make it work. And so you hit these growth spurts where you do not have a choice and you will not go back. I wish I had better words for that, but that is just the truth. You put so much effort into an idea, into a vision, and you know the pain, and you go, I am not going back to that. And so when you're birthing an idea, eventually you hope that it actually is tangible, like it's physical. You can touch it, you can see it. And then all of a sudden the world tells you it's stupid, or it's ugly, or it's not right, or you're biting off too much, or you're never going to raise capital for this. And then when you're raising capital, there's always money when you don't need it, and there's never money when you actually need it. And everybody's going to have an opinion on how one day they experience something. I mean, to this day, board members and investors. But the cool part is that vision piece, that passion piece, that desire inspires the right people to show up. I cannot give that enough credit. And so I think that's been one of the unlocks for us is we do our best to innovate publicly, take risks. VINCUE Next is coming up in less than 30 days. That's a huge risk for us because we're innovating publicly. We're literally putting our product roadmap out there and saying, this is the direction we're going. This is what we've built. Some of this we haven't even built. This is where it's going. That's a big risk on our part. But what is a bigger reward is the inspiration and the genuine thought leadership that we're taking to say, this is what we believe. For those of you that believe the same thing, you should come with us.
How many employees now at VINCUE?
114.
So how has your philosophy on hiring, retaining, motivating changed over time? And what's the magic around both recruiting the best talent and more specifically retaining the best talent?
It is chicken and the egg. We only have 4 salespeople for the whole company. We have a big product team. We have a big performance team. We have a good size onboarding team. We're onboarding 70-ish clients a month. We're nearly the size of a DMS transition. I mean, it's a big transition when somebody switches over to us. I used to believe we needed a bigger sales team. I used to believe we needed more people telling the world who we are. We need more people solving the problem. Money exchanges hands when problems are solved. Solve the problem. So what we teach is 2 things. One is for somebody to come into VINCUE, they have to have 3 talents. And obviously, if there's something going on with their character, none of these will actually be sustainable. But one is they have to know how to meaningfully connect with a human. That connection is so important because it outlasts innovation. If I fumble with you, but you know me, you'll give me the grace to say, hey, he'll get it right. No different than going to a restaurant and knowing the owner, but the chef that night had a bad night, right? Connection. The other thing is you've got to be able to solve the problem. Whatever you're selling, meaningfully solve the problem. You have to know how to do the essential job. I'm not a fan of middle management. We don't hire people to manage people. We hire people to be player coaches to solve the problem and inspire. We say run faster. And I don't mean that to exhaust somebody or burn somebody out. I think a leader's job is to grow other leaders, period. And I think the contributor's job is to outrun the leader. And I think that is the most honest way I have seen growth happen. So I know that I'm on the front line doing the things that I expect the sales team to do, the onboarding team to do, the performance team to do. I was on a sales call 30 minutes ago. But I expect the team behind me to be out in front of me, and I expect them to cut me off. Literally say, Danny, I got this. Hey, Danny, I already actually figured this. Awesome, go. That inspires. So meaningfully connect, solve the problem, close. You got to be able to close. If you're missing any one of those, you're not going to execute at a high level, in my opinion. You may have a team of 30 salespeople, but their quota is going to be so low that they're never even going to hit it. But when you invest in those types of trainings, the other unlock that we made, and we just came up with this. I mean, this is all whiteboarding sessions, and we do it. We create time for this every single week. Every Wednesday, we call it personal development. When we sell, and I think this applies for car dealers in the audience. Who's a car dealer in the audience? Nice. We all know the road to the sale. Meet and greet, qualify, all those types of things. And I own a car dealership, so I'm very familiar with that. We changed that, and our process is connection, exploration, validation, close. So connection is this. It's connecting. Take the pressure off. If somebody's interested, slow down the conversation and connect with the human. Because in that conversation, you understand the problem that they're after, right? We don't want to be a solution chasing a problem. We want to know the problem and be the solution. And the conversation is totally different when you actually connect. Then we move into exploration. Exploration may happen on that call. Most of the time does not. It happens on the next call where we take all the pressure off. Let's just look around. It's no different than being in real estate and showing a client a house. Check out the rooms. But it's a moment to imagine how you're going to design those rooms, because you know what you're living in now. What are you going to do with the rooms of this house, and how is it going to be better, and how are you going to entertain and invite guests and be proud of this home? Validation is where it gets fun. Validation is where you prove that you can do the things that you said you're going to do. It also takes the pressure off the sales team because you can bring in other experts. You can bring in people from onboarding. You can bring in people from development. You can bring in people from performance. And it gives them to shine, because what does the client want? The client wants to know that the expectation of what's being sold is going to be delivered after the sale. We have 100% clawback on commissions 90 days after the deal closes. Why? Because we wanted to prevent what we call FTLs, fail to launch. If we sell it and it doesn't ever go live, nobody gets paid, right? And it's a big deal. We talk about it. Connection, exploration, validation, close. The close just becomes a no-brainer. Of course we're going to close. We've connected, we've explored, we've validated, and now it's closed. The other hack, which I think comes from a good place, is we don't seek decision makers. We create champions. It genuinely doesn't matter if you're in titles, if you're looking at our system in marketing, if you're looking at our system as a sales manager, as a salesperson. Our job is to inspire a future state and do it honestly and do it with the most excitement. And when you create that champion, especially in a big organization like Oarsman, you've got to be able to inspire somebody enough that is going to go, hey, I just saw something. I think you should look at it. And then you have a champion in the room that believes what you believe, right? Simon Sinek. That's the only way we have figured out to change the model instead of sitting there and going, look at this cool, shiny object we just created. Because then what are you doing? You're relaying, if I show you a shiny object, it's up to you to judge if you like it or not.
So that sounds great. It sounds a little theoretical to me. How do you hire for those traits?
So we just started, actually, believe it or not, doing some personality testing. So we understand characteristics. But I believe in this idea of superpowers. I think every one of us has superpowers. My superpower is I tend to have a very clear vision of how something is going to work in my mind, like architecture-wise. And so that's how I use my superpower. When I look at others, we've trained to identify those superpowers and also have real honest conversations with the candidate around how they want to spend their time. Because I'm a heat-seeking missile to undercurrent and resentment, because I don't want somebody coming in imagining how something's going to be versus how it actually will be. So depending on the department that we hire for, we bring those people in and they live inside of VINCUE long before we ever hire them. One of the best investments we've made is in a chief of staff. Michael Summers is an incredible chief of staff that works on our team. I don't maybe get booed for this. I don't believe in HR. I don't like HR. I think it does the opposite of what it should do, at least in the traditional sense. Michael Summers' job, and this is a belief that we have, is to bring 2.5x out of every individual. So we may be 114 people serving nearly 1,500 rooftops today. Our average store has more employees than our entire company. So you can bet each person has to be able to have the ability to behave as 2.5 times themselves. Think about that in a car dealership. What if your bottleneck is your tower? And every person has to go to the tower to the same 2 people to get a number on a car. That is a problem, right? But what happens when you think about how does every single person do that? We think about that problem inside of VINCUE, and we've reshaped our teams to be able to get answers when a client has a question around a customer port that they need, a capability that they need to have. Michael, our chief of staff, we do certifications weekly for our teams inside of VINCUE. The expectation is no matter what department you work for, you understand how to operate the platform.
So very helpful. We've gone down a few rabbit holes. We're here at a SodaCon, and it is the year of the human.
Yeah.
You and I talk about this all the time. You know, the impact that AI may have on software companies such as VINCUE. So you guys think a lot about the future, what VINCUE is going to look like. Talk to us a little bit about the things that you're wrestling with right now. I mean, on one hand, you've got tremendous productivity of your software developers because of AI tools. On another, there is speculation that in the future, the dealer may not actually even log into systems. There may be systems of record with the data, but the actual interface may evolve very quickly, and we may get democratized software development so anyone at a dealership can kind of build their own tool. So how are you guys thinking about AI right now? The pros and the cons, the puts and takes. Is it keeping you up at night? Does it provoke anxiety? Are you more excited than ever? Is it a mixture of both?
So look what happened in the car business. Why do auctions exist? Auctions exist to create confidence between a buyer and a seller. And what have dealers been doing forever? Paying way too much money for confidence. They've been paying auction fees, transportation fees, expert fees by raising your hand. But that model has begun to change with the opportunity for dealer trade networks and online opportunities, right? And scalability. Data is confidence. Source of truth matters more than ever. The biggest software companies in our space that I don't have the most respect for have created these walled gardens that have made it very difficult to integrate with. They've told, meaning charged, for all of those integrations, and oftentimes the data isn't even that valuable to do things that aren't that even interesting, like price writebacks to a DMS. I mean, why do you charge for that? I'm not going to name the DMS. Today, what's really exciting is I would encourage everyone to think in this concept of planned obsolescence. You're either going to be obsolete in your behavior, in your solution, in your outcomes, or you're going to plan to be obsolete because you're reaching for what you're building. And so how does that relate to our business? We've been doing vibe code competitions now for almost 2 years. And we've incentivized our development team to take education, to create. We do vibe code competitions in creating solutions that we can then turn into production. So many of those moments have been asks from our dealers. But then we're still working in the foundational system, which is VINCUE, which is an algorithmic-based system. It's an if-then, if the comp set's this, if the book is this, if the sales data is this, the human's still making the decision. What's exciting is we now have the ability to do, instead of AI overlays, where maybe in the existing system there's some sort of AI functionality, we now have the ability to build AI native solutions that we can either, for the meantime, bring into VINCUE and start transitioning, and eventually completely displace what our dealers use today and move into a completely different environment, which is, I think, what you were talking about, the need not to log in. But the source of truth still really matters, which is why people say, it's going to be all about the data. And what is our superpower? It's being predictive in that data, understanding I bought a car, what is it actually going to sell for versus what did it sell for? And understanding those predictive indicators around days to sale, your own sales volume, first-party data in and around the behavior of customers online from third parties, and obviously search is changing. So having that truth is what is most important to us, so that we can continue to create software that's easy to interact with. And the big shift that I think is going to happen today, we look at a report, and then we have our aha moment, and we go out in the world and we try to do something with it. In the future, in the very near future, you're going to be able to not just talk to your data, but then have your data work for you. And today we can do that on a small level. Very soon we're going to do it on an enterprise level.
Well, I know we're almost at time here. So one last question for you. What's got you most excited right now?
Kind of back to what I started earlier, which is scaling our people. Our expectation is we want to be able to take every person and give them the ability to be 2.5x themselves. Well, we're doing that inside of VINCUE. We're about to do that for the industry. You had a whole presentation that I got to be a part of, talking about the future of AI, and in 1950, salespeople selling 10 cars, and today them still selling 10 cars. I think this is the first time in history that we're going to change that narrative. I think this is the first time that we're going to be able to actually give solutions to team members that give them the ability to do things that they weren't able to do before. And that's what I'm excited about, because that's where our focus is in VINCUE.
That's great. Well, Danny, for the folks that are out there that don't know you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Find me on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, but also VINCUE.com. I'm an operator at heart. I told you about my concept to run faster. That means I like to be on the front line. So that's my ask is do please reach out.
Awesome. Well, Danny, it's been a pleasure. It's good catching up. Danny Zaslavsky from VINCUE.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Danny. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Greenfield. If you're a founder or investor in mobility and something here sparked an idea, I'd love to continue the conversation. Please subscribe to the Automotive Ventures Intel Report and reach out to me. I read every message and respond personally. We'll see you next time.